The views expressed in this blog are hosted on my own website, are strictly personal, and do not reflect the views of any organization. Hello and welcome once again, friends, to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog, where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. Now, in the aftermath of the Nupur Sharma controversy, Indian television news media is being targeted from the left and the right. The left liberal voices argue that news television is culpable for giving a ready platform to hate-mongers. The right, especially the Hindutva right, insists that news TV is guilty of selective indignation by allowing Muslim sectarians to get away easily. So where does the truth lie? Let's take the left liberal argument first. Is news TV giving space to hate-mongering? The short answer, my friends, is yes. There is little doubt that there is far greater indulgence today of those who spew communal venom now than ever before. After being unshackled from the government-run Doordarshan monopoly in the early 1990s, private news TV in its formative years was not trapped in this frenzied competition that one witnesses today. The concept of breaking news today has virtually broken down. Being part of a relatively nascent TV news industry, news editors and reporters at the time were almost insulated from market pressures and thereby had far greater freedom to put journalism first. But now, with almost 400 my friends, 24/7 news channels in the country, there is a manic competition, a manic race for eyeballs that often places sensation above sense. This transformation is reflected in the contemporary format of news TV, where sharply polarized debate is often seen as far more effective and, dare I say, a cheaper way to design news operations. Where once field reportage was the basic diet of news TV, now the TV studio with the larger-than-life anchors is the dominant arena for noise rather than news. Even the nature of what passes off as debate has changed dramatically. I recall inviting in the 1990s the cerebral Congress leader, the late Vittal Rao Gadgil, V.N. Gadgil, to discuss a rather perceptive essay he had written and published on secularism. I had planned to get the equally formidable intellectual Arun Shourie to debate with Mr. Gadgil on the issue. Mr. Gadgil interestingly declined politely. I don't want, Rajdeep, a complex issue to be reduced to tutu meme soundbites between the two of us, was his excuse. This was an age, my friends, where we had a maximum of 2 to 3 high-profile guests to debate a subject at length. Now, channels often have 10 heads, even more, popping out of a TV screen, screaming at each other. I wonder sometimes how the soft-spoken Mr. Gadgil would respond to what I call the multi-headed Ravan school of talking heads journalism. Now, talking heads TV isn't just an Indian phenomenon, but globally investments in traditional news gathering have steadily declined. A flawed television rating point-centric model has meant that most news channels are convinced that cacophonous debate over divisive issues like religious identity will garner far more eyeballs or TRPs than an intelligent and meaningful discussion, let's say, on a serious subject like the state of the economy. That on the very day that consumer inflation last month in this country peaked to a 7-year high or a 8-year high, the prime time menu of most news channels ignored this big headline and instead focused on yet another shrill debate on, guess what, the Gyanvapi mosque. It reveals the skewed priorities of a morally compromised news ecosystem, in my view. A Fox News on steroids news model, a reference to the pioneers of the profit from hate TV network in the United States, has meant that credibility often loses out to chaos on the small screen, and an advertiser-driven business bottom line can sometimes trump journalistic ethics. But why bash the frazzled newsroom editors alone? After all, a newsroom mirrors the grim reality of a conflict-ridden society where hate speech is increasingly being normalized. Those who accuse news channels, for example, of manufacturing hate, forget that the likes of Nupur Sharma aren't fringe elements, as the government of India rather disingenuously describes them, but they represent the political mainstream of India's dominant ruling party. What Nupur Sharma blurted out about the Prophet may well have been expressed in the heat of yet another acrimonious TV debate, but the fact is that her trenchant anti-Muslim views in general typify or reflect the core beliefs of many within the Saffron Brotherhood, for whom such language sadly is now par for the course. A hate speech tracker earlier this year confirms a near pandemic use of inflammatory language and an exponential rise since 2014, especially in remarks that have been made by ruling BJP politicians. Let's now reflect upon the right-wing case of bias against their viewpoint. Now recall, it was precisely this argument of bias that saw the rise of Fox News in America more than a decade ago as a response to right-wing politicians fulminating against what they said was the so-called left liberal domination of American news media. The initial Fox News motto was, it was a fair and balanced channel because it was finally providing space as a news network to voices who were often completely ignored, voices with pronounced right-wing agendas. In India too, the legacy media has been accused of being controlled by a left liberal elite that was contemptuous of alternate views. The rise of the political right is seen to have ensured greater space in the media to opinions that were not tied to traditional political correctness. Now, this argument that the right wing makes is valid, but only up to a point. Yes, a large section of the Indian media was very, even dismissive of the Hindutva right, but post 1992, as the BJP has become the principal pole of Indian politics, there is, in my view, a marked power shift. Where once the left liberals directed the media narrative, now the right-wing cheerleaders are firmly ensconced in leadership roles in most newsrooms. The alleged pandering of minority communalists is frankly more myth than reality. In most instances, the topi-wearing television Muslim as I call them, are caricatured and made a figure of ridicule and fun, often demonized during, some would say, prefixed, well-choreographed slanging matches. In any case, the credentials of some of these self-styled TV Maulanas to speak for their community is highly dubious. So while the Nupur storm in a sense is a wake-up call for news TV, the elephant in the media jungle is the growing influence of social media in shaping the public discourse. While planning his controversial takeover of social media platform Twitter, billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk had described Twitter as this: the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are discussed. Lofty words, my friends, that belly the reality of a nightmarish space where hate speech often has a free run in the name of free speech. Many news channels today follow Twitter trends in their primetime agenda, their primetime topics almost dictated to by the clamorous noise in the virtual world. Sadly, in this public sphere where everyone, including highly organized political troll armies, seem to be outraging all the time, here is the grim truth, my friends. Farmer suicides will not gather the traction that a raucous shivling versus fountain debate almost certainly will. Let me give you a postscript. Leading business magnate Harsh Goenka, who often creates a stir on Twitter with his punchy and sarcastic tweets, recently warned that corporate advertisers were being driven away by those who feed off hate speech on TV. So will Mr. Goenka now walk the talk and call out the news anchors and programs that routinely profit from hate? That's perhaps a challenge he should take up. That was the Straight Bat. Do of course subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe, and yes, say no to hate. Namaskar, Jai Hind.